Hello.
Let's see. Control F lemons. Control F smut. Hi, I'm Shayzilla.
Oh,
That was my
Shay.
intro.
I'm most likely to make it as the final girl in a horror novel. I'm Melissa Morbid.
That was good. I don't even know what to say. What's like a good statement?
She's got writer's block. It's Angela Undead.
That was good. That was good.
And we are the Goths Next Door.
Next door.
Hi. And we have a very, very special guest tonight. Melissa contacted her, and I'm so excited to introduce Danielle DeVour. Is that correct, DeVour?
Yes, it is. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Yes, bitch. Hello.
Hello. Thanks for having me here.
We're so
Of
excited to
course.
have
We're
you.
so excited to have you.
So tell us a little bit about you. You're an author. Tonight is
Yes.
all about writing and authors and
I
horror and
am
creepy
a
stuff.
horror and horror and dark fantasy author, and I also have a degree in art history as well as theater and design tech. I am also an editor for City Owl Press, and they are a publishing company that does horror, fantasy, contemporary romance, and pretty much everything in between, like anything that can be speculative fiction. So I get to not only work on my own books, but I also get to help other people with their books and genres that I love. So it's fun.
That's awesome. You're like doing all the
So
things.
cool.
You kind of do everything. It sounds
That's
like.
actually what my boss Tina Moss says. She's like, I'm like the jack of all trades, because I also do like the social media for the press. I do like I send out trade advanced readers copies. I do all this stuff.
Oh my
Holy
gosh.
crap.
Oh, wow.
You probably have a
Total
really good planner.
I'm sorry, what?
You probably have a really good planner, or like you're really like
Yes,
organized.
and
aren't you? Yeah.
I'm kind of like I have ADHD, but I'm obsessive compulsive at the same time. So like I'll have like this list of things I need to do, and I've always been one of those people that have to get stuff done early. So I have to like make myself take days off on the weekend, otherwise I'll keep working.
Yep.
What does that sound like?
Yeah.
Stuff. I was like, hey, same. What's up, bestie?
That's right.
So Melissa made a little game for us, and some of our viewers might not have seen this done before, but we're going to try to make like a little short story, a little scary short story, but we're gonna go one word at a time and go around in a circle and see what we come up with.
Okay.
And I guess keep it semi-appropriate, but I mean, I don't know. Just do whatever you want, I suppose.
Okay.
My mom's not watching these anymore. She gave up. Crap, which order are we in? Let me look at our setup on Twitch, because I don't even know what we look like right now, who's in what order. I should look. This is... Okay. It goes Angela, Danielle, me, Melissa on the screen. Sorry, I had to look at that, because thank you, Brittany. Shout out to Brittany, who is once again running our stream.
Yeah.
Being a
we
bad
love
bitch.
you, Brittany.
So I guess we could go Angela, Danielle, me, Melissa for the words.
Sounds good.
So we're
No pressure.
so like
Say it.
one word, not even a
Yeah,
sentence,
bitch.
just one word.
Yeah.
On
B.
Oldest.
Talk.
there. Danielle.
I thought it was your
Is
turn.
it you? Oh,
I
no.
said-
Did you
I-
there?
I said there.
Oh, was.
Oh, A.
Frog.
Haunted.
Ooh.
Boat.
With.
Sinister.
Sailors.
And
A.
Did you say they?
A is an apple. A.
Okay. Monstrous.
Snake.
Mermaid.
Ugh. What was that, Danielle?
I said that.
Devoured.
All.
Men.
Oh, the end.
The end.
What was that if we like put it together?
On the coldest dock, there was
a haunted boat
Uh-huh.
with sinister sailors and a monstrous snake that ate all men.
Yes. That's kind of beautiful. You know what? From that prompt, I am now going to write a book because Danielle has inspired me. She was telling us before we went live that people can get into writing very easily not very easily, but
No. You have to have talent to begin with.
yeah,
But if you
it's easier than I
work
thought.
hard, it's like getting in with like one of the like big publishers is much harder than getting in with small press. I'm like a big fan of small press because generally small
Absolutely.
presses like really care about their authors and they want you to develop a career versus like a big publisher wants you to have a hit out of the the block, and if you
Mm-hmm.
don't do well with your first book, then you can get dropped by that publisher.
That's
Oh,
so
wow.
unfair.
Yeah, and it's really hard to get started as a debut author. So small presses are more apt to be like, okay, we're going to take you on, and you're part of our team. So let's work together to build your career and build your fan base. So I
Mhm.
much prefer small press over like big traditional publishing because of that.
Absolutely. That makes sense. And I never realized, because to me it seems like such a daunting world because
It
there's
can be.
so many steps, and like I love that like a smaller publisher can probably better assist you
I mean, we don't
throughout
have
rather
as
than like a
much
giant one.
of a budget as like a big press, but we can guide you on how to like build
Yeah,
your like
exactly.
bookish like social media and how to like just really develop your presence online as an author because now it's so important, just like with any other creative industry, to connect with people online that you have to have an online presence. There's no way, like you can't be Hemingway
Mm-hmm.
hidden in your like little dark dungeon. You have to be out there and be
Hemming
part of everything.
Daddy.
Yeah.
I do love
It's such a
Hemingway.
change in the world. I've seen so many TikToks of different authors trying to get their stories out there
Mm-hmm.
on Book Talk.
My bad.
Book Talk is a huge tool right now.
Mm-hmm.
It is probably the most useful thing for an author to do.
Honestly, TikTok in general is such if you can utilize it correctly and get success, you can use it to really launch. There's been so many people who
Yes.
found such huge success. So,
Yeah.
speaking of, are you on TikTok, Danielle?
I am.
Where
You can
can
find
everybody
me.
find you?
My name on TikTok is Devorkian. So Devorkian.
I love that.
And if anyone doesn't know, there was a doctor back in the 80s and 90s called Jack Kevorkian who was known for being like the first person that would help people pass away if they were suffering from like a severe terminal illness or something and they couldn't handle the pain anymore, so he would help them pass in a
That's what I
very
thought.
dignified way. And it was just kind of funny. The reason why Dvorkian came about was actually by way of my mother. My mother at the time was working at NIOSH, which is a division of CDC, and there was a college student that was in there doing an internship, and he heard her name, her last name, and he was just like, okay, Dvorkian. And so I was like, okay, that's a fun name, so I'm going to use it for like some of my social medias.
I love that. You're like, well, you know what? Fine. Thank you. I'll take
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
You're like a good branding.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I love it. I know all of us are
Melissa.
so eager to ask you questions.
Yeah, I know. I was like, Melissa
Yeah.
made these questions, and I'm really excited about them. I've been like reading these, being like, okay, I'm excited because I don't. I don't know much about this world from your perspective, so I would love to hear your answer to a lot of these.
Oh, sure. I am an open book. I will answer anything
Oh,
that
I
I know
guess
the answer to. So,
An open book.
I
yes.
guess mine was already asked. Mine was like, tell us about yourself. So Angela, you have the next question if you want to dive
So,
in.
this is actually a really good question. So, as both an author and an editor, you're probably no stranger to the vast subgenres within horror fiction. Which subgenre fascinates you the most and why?
I, as a reader, I am obsessed with vampires. Always have been.
Yes.
I was the kid who taught myself a little bit of Romanian to be able to read folklore and stuff when I was really tiny. So vampires
That's
are like my total
awesome.
jam.
Wow.
I love anything to do with vampires. In terms of writing, I've kind of fallen into writing exorcism and possession fiction, which
Hmm.
is really fun because I don't I like to take the tropes that are really common and kind of turn them upside down and then add other parts of fantasy and horror and like envelop my own world and kind of create my own kind of Kolchak the Night Stalker quasi Jim Butcher type thing going on. So it's a lot of fun.
That's
I
awesome.
love that. That's a whole mix.
Yeah.
Horror often explores deep fears and it taps into our darkest emotions, but it's the substance of a good story that really stays in a reader's brain for a long time. How do you write stories that evoke genuine fear in your readers, but also are giving us an engaging and memorable narrative?
I'm a big fan of adding humor to something because
I like that.
in real life, nothing is ever so, completely dark all the time. You can have, somebody walking down the street and like somebody's chasing them, but then, a squirrel runs in front of them or something, and it's just something completely ridiculous. It doesn't have anything to do with what's going on. And I like to add tidbits like that to increase the realism, because the more realistic you have something, the more it kind of gets into someone's head because it then becomes, well, this is something that could maybe happen. And I like doing that because then it gets the reader kind of starting to tiptoe just a little bit, and then you start amping up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're really careful, at least the way I write, in that you try to pepper in like little things that like gradually increase the dread over time, so it's not like you go to a movie theater
Ugh.
and see like a shock moment constantly, because after a while you become desensitized to those. Whereas if you
True.
have like this gradual building and then all of a sudden it hits, it knocks you out sideways and you're like, ah.
Yeah. Not for nothing, but I don't know if sometimes when you guys read or anything like that, like I find that when I read books, I can be super easily distracted. So when you add things like that, that's super like realistic and makes you actually feel like that's what draws anybody in, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Love that.
Oh shit, it's my turn. Fuck. In horror, characters often face terrifying and otherworldly situations. How do you create relatable characters despite their extraordinary situations and circumstances that they find themselves in?
I like to make characters that are not perfect, because none of
Oh.
us are perfect. And there are too many characters like, the Mary Sue, that's kind of like a general like slang term, is like the trope, like the cliche, like, the little goody two shoes that somehow does everything right, and even though this bad stuff happens, she manages to miraculously do this thing even though she doesn't know what she's doing, and she ends up being okay at the end. That's like a Mary Sue type of character. I like to do, like, for instance, my main character in the Marker Chronicles, which is my exorcism series. Jimmy Holiday is a defrocked priest, and he is very self-deprecating. He freely admits that half the time he doesn't know what he's doing, but he
Yes.
takes advice from other people. Like, his fiance is a witch, and so she operates a lot on her beliefs, and so he asks her questions about occult things that he encounters and gets her input on things, and he's not
Mm-hmm.
closed-minded that he won't accept information from other sources than what he personally knew when he was a priest. And I think that, when you create a character, you have to make them well-rounded and willing to be more realistic, because if you have, just a character that's, two-dimensional, then nobody's going to feel anything about that character. They're not going to care. But if you give a background, like, this character went through this horrible thing in their past, and that thing is what directed them to be this other thing, and you just kind of build on these things. And
Mm-hmm.
what's really fun about writing a series is that over time you can add more of these tidbits, and like really over time, it's like you get to know a friend versus just knowing like this like little tiny bit of a slice of a character's like experience.
It's almost like the iceberg theory with an author is that with an iceberg, you only see like the top 10% or something like that, and
Mhm.
that's what maybe the reader is getting per book. But the author knows the 90% underneath that is building this character. And then over time, over a series especially, you can then introduce other stuff that you, the author, because you've created such a fully fleshed out character, you can bring all these tidbits that will help
Mhm.
drive the narrative for future books
Exactly.
because you had it sitting down there the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
I went to college once.
Do you like keep like a file on like your main characters and like stuff that you've created about them so you can like reference it, or like how do you keep track?
Sadly, no. I should do that. I have
You
everything kind of
should.
stored up here somehow, and I've had a couple people comment they are kind of puzzled as to how I come up with some of the things I come up with, because I tend to just kind of wander along, and then like I'll get an idea and I'll figure out how to incorporate that idea in the world I've already created, and I essentially write myself into corners and then write myself back out.
I
And that's
love
how I do every
that.
single book.
That's such a
That
good
makes sense.
challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like creating your own puzzle, but it's a puzzle that somebody else has to look at and be able to make sense of it.
Yes. So, the horror genre has its fair share of iconic monsters and creatures. Are there any particular entities that you find most intriguing, and have they inspired your own creations? I know you kind of said vampires are your thing, but is
Yeah.
there
But is
anything
there like
else?
one vampire?
Well, my absolute
Dracula.
favorite vampire of all time is Lestat.
Uh,
Yeah?
He's my favorite. I can't help it. I think he's the best written vampire character ever. He's just fun. But in terms of like my own stuff, I got to thinking the other day that there isn't a whole lot. While there's a lot of werewolf movies, there aren't a whole lot of werewolf novels written, and so that's something I
Oh.
might be doing at some point, is writing a werewolf story. The other thing I kind of like to do is kind of think out of the box a little bit, and I'm actually in the process of writing kind of like a monster romance at the moment. And what
Ooh.
I'm doing is there's this character that is a rock star, but he's also part flying spaghetti monster. And so when he gets horny, like he grows these spaghetti tentacles out of his sides and stuff. So
he's Italian.
yeah, exactly.
Firefly spaghetti monster, I love
Yes.
it. Do you guys know, every chat, do you know about the flying spaghetti monster and that whole thing?
No,
No? Oh my gosh,
I
it was like
don't.
this, it was like a whole thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Danielle, but if I remember right back in school, it was a guy wrote this because they were saying, all these other, like I think predominantly Christian teachings were being taught in school. So he was like, well, then what about my religion? The flying spaghetti monster.
Yes.
No, and people would wear like the actual spaghetti drainers on their head.
Yes.
What the hell? This is so
No, it's
amazing.
really funny. If you get a chance, look it up. And the really
I'm
funny
gonna look
part
this
is
up.
that it's the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. They have a website, and
It's just the fact that it's real.
yeah, I contacted the guy that invented it all, because obviously he invented it, so he owned the copyright to it. And so I sent him an email. I'm like, okay, this is kind of out of the box, but I have this idea for a book. And I like relayed to him the idea for it, and like the working title, which is My Noodly Appendages: A Pastafarian Romance. And he was just like, you have to write this book. Yes, I give you permission.
That's
That's amazing. He's just like, yep, go.
He
The
gave you
the
the green.
the Pope of the Flying Spaghetti Monster Church gave you his blessing.
Yes.
Literally.
That is chef's kiss.
Yeah, it's
I
great.
Speaking of your books, I want to make sure we remind all of our viewers we are doing a giveaway
Yes.
with Danielle's books, and Melissa prearranged it. Melissa, do you want to help tease what's happening in the end? You can describe
Yes.
the
If you
thing.
entered our giveaway on Twitter, I went ahead and grabbed everybody's screen names from Twitter that entered our giveaway, and we entered it into a spinning wheel, and we'll spin that wheel and see who the wheel picks.
But that's
And
at the
our
end, so you got to stay
that
to
will
the
be at
end.
the end. Stick
Yeah.
around to see if you won. There are going to be 6 total winners. So it's not just like, oh, one and done. We're talking 6 different winners. And once one person wins, they'll be removed from the ability to win again. So nobody will win all of it. It'll be 6 different winners. So stick
And one
around.
person gets a very special. We're releasing a limited edition hardback of Stars Point that actually has an alternate ending that has not been published before. So it has like extra goodies in it and everything. So one of those winners will get the special hardback.
Ooh, so stick
This
around. Our
is
very last
amazing.
winner will
Yeah.
get that. Ooh,
I love hardbacks. I love the way they smell. Is that weird?
Yeah.
No, it's not.
No, I
so
agree.
They're just great.
good.
Okay.
That's like one of
It's
the
really
things with
exciting as an
Kindle,
author
you
when you
know?
actually get a hardback because a lot of books are mostly published in paperback and ebook now. So you kind of like to actually finally get a hardback is like a, oh my gosh, I made this step, I got the hardback. So it's like a really exciting thing. So this will be my second hardback. So
Congratulations! Oh my
Hell
god,
yeah.
that's so exciting.
yes. Unfortunately, I don't have the cover for it. I was hoping that we would have the cover art done so I could like present it to everyone, but unfortunately, it's not ready yet. But if you go on my website, DanielleDeVour.com, there is a pre-order sign up. So if anyone's interested in pre-ordering a hardback, you can fill out the form on the website.
Awesome.
So cool.
Got
When
a
you
whole
do your
thing. It's
cover
like a
art, do you hire an illustrator or do you take pictures and use models?
Actually, what we do is we work through a company out of the Ukraine called Meebly Art, and they will pay for like stock photography or illustrations and things, and they combine it together into a cover. But
Cool.
if you're a self-published person, you can either work through someone like that, or you can actually pay photographers to do photography. I actually also know someone who has actually paid artists to do like paintings for their covers, which is extremely expensive, but I've seen it done. So you can do a lot of things with book covers now.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of castings for romantic book covers in LA. They're constantly doing the photo shoots for romantic
that's so
book
hot.
covers.
Yeah.
With horror, it can be a really powerful tool for social commentary, addressing important issues in a totally unique way with the spooky element of horror. Have you used your writing as a means to convey any social or cultural messages that were important to you?
I have actually in Stars Point. It gets into the fact that my main character's sister uh, unalived herself after being abused by a unfortunate man in the neighborhood, and so it gets into how child abuse and things affect not only the person who has dealt with the situation, but the family that's left behind if someone unalives themselves. And so I felt really strongly that that was something that would be important to input into my fiction because it's unfortunately so commonplace in our world today that I think it's a good conversation to have.
I couldn't agree more. That's people really do need reminders, that to stay and hang out on this earth, and your
Exactly.
family and friends and loved ones will definitely miss you. So stick around.
100%.
And I feel like putting it out, like not hiding it and being
Exactly.
honest and showing it from a different perspective that people might not have considered, like really helps ground people in a reality of like how devastating a situation like that can be.
Exactly.
And how serious SA is, that's really
Mm-hmm.
important
Mm-hmm.
too, especially with everything going on in the media now and how many times victims are villainized themselves in our
Exactly.
culture, especially if
Hmm.
they're women. Um, I think that's so important to discuss that and have that be a part of your book. Thank you for
Very much
including
so.
that.
Well, thank you.
As an editor, you have a keen eye for storytelling. So when you're reviewing submissions and you're going through everything sent to you, what are key elements that you look for in any particular writing piece that makes it stand out from the rest?
The biggest thing for me is voice. You don't want your fiction to sound like the adults on a peanut cartoon. So, you don't want to have a wah, wah, wah. You want to have, bits of humor, or you want to have, like, if it's a fantasy, you want to have, like, melodic language. Things that really are genre specific, but also your own take on it so that it makes, as you're reading it, it makes you fall in love with the prose. And so that's one of the big things I look for. The other thing is storytelling. And,
Mm-hmm.
granted, a submission is usually what I'll do is like I'll ask for like the first 5 pages. So it's not like I'm getting a lot of the story to begin with, but in the first 5 pages, you should be able to have like the basic of the story that's starting to unfold. So if you don't quite have that yet, and you have, 5 pages of somebody, say, rambling about their shampoo bottle, you need to cut a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff. So it's like you run into all different types of things when you're an editor in the different submissions. One big thing is paying attention to the editor that you're submitting to, because I get a lot of submissions that aren't in the genres that we publish at all. A big example of this is that City Owl does not publish any young adult, and on my query manager thing, I have it checked that I do not do young adult, but I get a lot of young adult submissions. So people
Oh,
need to
yeah.
be really
Pay
careful.
attention.
Yeah,
Yeah, obviously.
yeah,
That would seem pretty basic, but I guess it's not if
Yeah.
that happens to you a
yeah.
lot.
And
No,
you
Danielle,
can kind of
the thing
understand
I'm
when it's
submitting to
somebody
you will
that
be
doesn't
adults.
that English is their second language or something, but
Oh,
it happens more often than you'd think. That it's pretty common that somebody will just be like, "Oh, she writes fantasy. I'll go ahead and submit my young adult book, and I'll write down the young adults in the query letter." And maybe she'll skip over it and go ahead and read it anyway, and that's like a big flag to me. I'm like, "Oh, didn't read the thing. Reject."
you
Nope.
mentioned that in fantasy you like a really melodic style of writing.
Hmm.
Is there anything you like with horror, like that's similar, like but like that?
Horror is very much like I like fast paced. So and what I mean by that is not so much that, you don't have any description or anything like that. What I mean is like you have an intensity. So say you're driving down a road and like somebody jumps out in front of the car and you swerve and miss, but then they're gone. And so it's like these like progression of events and it's described, but it moves the story forward in a fast direction. So it makes it action packed as well as also horrific.
For my ADHD, that's perfect. I'm like, yes, the fast books. I love fast-paced books. Yes,
Yeah.
where it
Mm-hmm.
is just like one thing after another that can keep me
Hmm.
right there. Oh, I love that.
So, horror stories often leave a lasting impact on readers and sometimes lingering in their minds long after they've finished reading. What do you think makes horror fiction so endearing and beloved by fans? How do you keep fans on the edge of their seat every time they're reading a book?
I think it's knowing in general what people are afraid of. And that kind of changes throughout time. So we've gone from, especially with things like the pandemic, we went through like never imagining that, illness could become a big force of fear in our society. And now it's, everybody realizes, okay, illness can be a fear. So as an author, it's like you pay attention to these things that come across the news. You pay attention to little things. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're writing a pandemic story, but you know that people now know what it's like to be stuck in four walls and not be able to get out. And so you can use that feeling of being stuck in your writing in order to
Mm-hmm.
make the people feel that again, that amps up their anxiety and their terror to a certain extent, if
I'm
that makes any
getting
sense.
goosebumps a little bit.
Yep.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ugh.
That's gosh, you've got to like really be, I feel like, not only on the
Very
pulse of
present.
everything that's going on, but you also have to be able to be creative because like you said, you're
Yeah.
not being super literal and being like, I'm writing the COVID spooky book,
Exactly.
but how you can incorporate this cultural phenomena and this worldwide tragedy and make that into something unrelated, but people can still take that known
hmm
fear and feel it. That takes a lot of skill and creativity, I feel like.
Mhm.
And it's
Oh yeah,
the
like
thing about,
Contagion.
being an author to remember too is if you're starting out as an author, on average you're going to write at least 100,000 words before you really know what you're doing. It takes a while. It's like any other skill. You have to practice and you have to learn your craft. So it's not like, if you start trying to write a short story and it doesn't work out and it doesn't sound good, that you should quit because you're just still in that learning process.
Yeah.
So, I've been publishing since 2012, so I've been doing it for quite a while. And so it takes time to develop all these skills, just like with, like if you're a musician, you have to learn how to play your instrument in different styles of music. Or if you're a makeup artist, you have to learn how to do the different types of makeup. It's just like any other thing that's creative, you have to learn your craft. So don't get discouraged really
Don't
fast.
get
Yeah.
discouraged. Yeah.
The horror genre has evolved over the years. Been embracing new themes, styles, and now we've got even television horror shows like American Horror Story. How do you see the future of horror fiction unfolding, and do you anticipate any trends coming up?
I wouldn't be surprised. One of the things that I think that there's going to get more into like kind of book slash streaming kind of combinations because streaming has
Ooh.
become so big and there are already like little apps that are combining like words with like animations and stuff. And so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't eventually evolve into using something like AI to create images that are licensed, but they go along with a book, or they actually almost make a
Mm-hmm.
picture book type of thing while a story's being told that people can watch and tune into. That I can see happening.
I'd be super into something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's basically everything, all mediums evolve,
hmm
everything that we're consuming evolves and changes. So it only makes sense that certain things would merge
Yeah.
and build on top of each other. Yeah. What role does atmosphere and setting play in your horror fiction? So how do you create an immersive and chilling environment for your readers?
Well, the best advice I ever got was to think of writing a book like you're watching a film. So,
Okay.
you know that you have to describe, say, the apartment you're in. Well, you have to know whether it's day or night. You have to know if there's any unusual smells. You have to know what the weather is outside. You have to know if there's any odd noises inside the apartment or outside. And so you want to take all these things from all five senses and put them in your fiction. Because
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, you have to describe everything, but you have to describe it in a way that is not only interesting, but is also immersive. So you're kind of building a visual representation, but with words.
That's so interesting. I feel like so many books I've read have really relied on only describing what you can see. And then you just
Mm-hmm.
mentioned talking about what can you smell? Is there a
Smell.
feeling in the room? That I feel like that's like so good for creating the mood, especially for horror.
hmm
Smell and weather for horror. I feel like that's just a key, really could create a good spooky atmosphere that I feel like maybe other authors have missed out on. Because I feel like it's usually just been like, oh, this is what the room looks like, and they're
hmm
not mentioning those other key things. Temperature,
Yeah.
how often in
Or
horror
like,
stuff is
if
temperature
you're
involved?
walking across the room and you step in like a pool of blood, while the
Mm.
blood's going to feel kind of sticky. Is it warm or is it cold? Little things like
Ugh.
that.
How fresh is that murder?
Yeah,
Yeah, but, like,
exactly.
the way you explain it and describe it in a book, especially when you're really in it, it makes you feel like you're there.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh. So, are there any real life events, folklore, or legends that have influenced your writing in the horror genre? If so, how have they shaped your storytelling? So, I know you kind of said already with vampires and stuff like that, but is there anything else that has kind of helped you along the
Well,
way to
my
Mhm.
family, both my parents had grown up in haunted houses. And then the
Ooh,
house that I grew up
sis.
in, there were shadow people going through the yard constantly. And
Excuse me.
yes, you could actually watch them walk up the hill and walk past the house.
We need more of these stories
We're
too,
kind
please.
so,
Oh, I've got
so we're
lots of
so
stories.
excited to announce that Danielle DeVour will be back on the Goths Next Door on date, where she will be telling us all these things.
Absolutely, I'll
Mhm.
be happy to come back and talk about ghost stories. I have a bunch of them.
Oh yes, baby.
Oh my god,
In
I
fact,
Oh,
love when
the
someone
office
is
I'm in
doing
right
it
now is haunted.
themselves. Oh my
my
god.
God. Oh,
Yeah.
but so n- n- no. Where if you don't mind me asking, where did you grow up?
I live in West Virginia, roughly an
Oh
hour
yeah.
south of
Mm-hmm,
Pittsburgh,
mm-hmm.
Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah. No, all of West Virginia, that whole
Yeah,
state,
Isn't that like the
Appalachian Mountains.
yes, and
yeah.
where is it are they called skinwalkers? I might be wrong.
There
There's
are
something,
Yeah.
some
right?
It
like skinwalker legends, and then the southern part of the states where Mothman was.
Mhm.
That's where Mothman is
Yep,
from?
And
yep.
that's where we'll be going one day. We're gonna make a visit there. The Goths are gonna visit there.
Yeah, you
So
got
if
to
we do
go.
ever visit you and you want to meet up with us, meet
I
us
would
there.
love to. That would be great. We can go to
Hell
Point
yeah,
Pleasant, and I'll like get our pictures taken with Mothman.
I'm
Oh
That'd
my
be
about
fun.
this.
god. Get
Ugh.
Boss Dad's little autograph.
Well, that'd be kind of hard because he's a statue, but
No, no, I believe it. He'll come to life just for us.
okay.
He will.
All right.
As a female author in the horror genre, have you faced any unique challenges or any stereotypes, and how have you overcome them?
When I first got started, I was told that I should choose a male-sounding pen name.
Mm,
Uh, Either use just like my initials, like DL DeVore, or completely change my name to something male-sounding. And I was like,
mm.
fuck no.
Good
I
for
am who I
you.
am.
Yeah,
So I've always been Danielle DeVore. The only reason I would use a
hell
pen
yeah.
name would be literally if it was something like if I was like suddenly changing to a genre like it was complete comedy or something, and then I'd want like a funny pen name to go with it, but I'd make it plain on my website that this is who I'm also am.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That
that's the
makes
one
sense.
time that I had some discrimination. I was like, no, I'm a girl and I write horror and I like spooky stuff. You can either take it or leave it.
I mean,
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
that in like any other field, like someone's like, "Oh, I went to school to be a dentist." And they're like, "Well, make sure that your dentistry name, make sure it sounds like it's a man." You
Yeah,
know? Like that is so objectionable and so
yeah.
offensive and just
And the
awful.
really
Good
sad
for
part
you
about it,
not to
that was
be into it.
2012. That's not that long ago. That was 2012.
Mm.
But
It's
like
not
not that's
fair.
barely 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Before shit.
It's a damn shame, truly. But the on the positive note is that women are more accepted in horror now. There are quite a few of not only female authors that are published both in traditional publishing houses and small press, but also there's a very big community of indie horror authors. So women are attacking horror with gusto, so that's a yay for us.
Yeah. Clip that. Women are attacking horror with gusto.
Yeah.
Yes, I love
How do
that.
you how do you keep readers on the edge of their seat?
I
Mm.
have this thing, and so far I have
Mm.
not accomplished it, but it's a goal I have. My goal is to one day write something that scares the crap out of myself.
Ooh, that's a good
I haven't
goal.
done it yet.
Mm.
So I keep trying to write stuff and keep trying to come up with things that could possibly lead me down that path. So far, I think it's working because I've had people both tell me that I've made them forever afraid of 3 a.m. And I've also had people tell me that
Ooh,
my
the
book scared the
devil's
shit out of them.
hour.
So I'm like, yes, this is good. But I haven't scared myself yet. But I keep hoping and I keep trying.
Ooh,
Yeah, but
You'll
once
get
you
there.
get that, you're gonna be like, oh god, now I can't sleep with at night at all.
Well, no, see, I
Yeah.
have the opposite thing. Like, if I find something that bothers me, then I'm the type of person that keeps diving myself into it and desensitizing myself from it.
wow.
And it gets really obsessive with it. And, like, for instance, when I was younger, film The Exorcist creeped me out a little bit. So what did I do? I forced myself to watch it in the dark alone.
Fair?
And yeah.
People keep telling me to do that with spiders, and I
No.
can't
Yeah,
do it.
I'm never gonna
It's
do
Yeah,
that with
but
a
scary.
snake.
spiders is something that, can touch you. A movie isn't going to touch you.
True.
Yeah.
True.
Unless
I
it's The Ring.
watched as a kid the old like the black and white one, not the one that came out in the early 2000s of The Haunting. It's
Mm-hmm.
like the black and white one. When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I would just be like, this movie's so scary to me, and for some reason, I would just sit home alone in the dark and be like, let me watch this.
Mhm. It was great. It was perfect.
Right?
I
The
love that
when that
movie.
wall
Good.
breathes is just so
Yes!
cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my god, all of it. It's so freaky. It's so freaky. Oh,
And sometimes I think black and white makes something creepier because you
yes.
Yeah.
have the
It does.
shadows. And so
Mhm.
it gives you a totally different kind of alien feel to whatever you're watching. And so I think more films should be shot in black and white for horror. That's my opinion.
Yes.
Mhm.
Have you guys see that the Oppenheimer movie? I may have pronounced that wrong. Oppenheimer, I don't know. That parts of it are going to be in black and white, and
Mm-hmm.
parts of it are going to be in color, depending on if it was subjective for the character or objective. And I'm like,
Oh.
That's really smart.
Oh wow.
isn't that brilliant? I'm like, that is
Yes,
so cool.
Very
So
interested in that.
you
that's great.
know, when it's randomly in black and white, it's like that means that it's the character versus like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, fact that we know for sure happened versus what could be subjective. I love that.
And like in
Speaking of like
Schindler's List when they had the little girl in the red coat.
Red coat.
Yeah.
Mhm. Mm.
talking about breathing walls and haunting and all that sort
Yes.
of thing, horror fiction often goes into supernatural. You were talking about exorcism and
Mm-hmm.
explores the unknown. When you're writing with supernatural, how do you balance the supernatural with grounded storytelling to have it still be believable, although it is supernatural?
One of the things I like to do is make in every single book have one character be a smartass. And the reason I
Ah.
do that is not only because I know a lot of smartasses and I get a lot of really cool one-liners. One of them is my father, and I've flat out said that I've copied a lot of the things that will fly out of his mouth and put in my books. But the point of having a smartass is that we all know somebody like that. And so, if you can kind of make a connection to your friend base or your family base, then that makes the horror more realistic because you're making a personal connection to it.
Mhm.
And so, I like to add like little tricks like that because it makes the horror in and of itself grounded because we all know a smart aleck or a smart ass
Fair.
somewhere. And so, then you're like, you either can see yourself or you see somebody you know very well. And so when you take into those little things, then it helps, like, even if you have, like, an eight-legged monster walking through the hallway, but your friend's over here, like, hey, I wonder if he wants a beer. It's more realistic. It's funny that you still have the thing coming at you, and it still could
Mhm.
kill you.
Mhm. It's a
I
Yeah.
love
balance.
that.
Are there any particular horror authors or authors in general or works that have had a significant influence on your writing or your approach style to writing?
I don't know that I've had like specific stylistic changes in my writing. I can say that early Anne Rice was something that I wanted to aspire to write like, but I write completely different than she does. But I always loved her writing style and the way that she used very lush language for descriptions and things. I tend to write more in a like fast-paced kind of stabby style, so our styles are completely different, but I always admired her style. And I was never able to match it, so I was like, okay, I need to come up with my own voice. So I guess you could say that her style made me develop my own voice as an author.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
like inspiring, but like, you're flourishing to be your own flower
Mhm.
blossoming instead of trying to be the exact same type.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
I love that.
And Angela had to step away, I'm assuming, to get her computer charger because I'm sure her computer is dying. But can you share any memorable or bizarre encounters that you've had with fans of your work?
The most memorable one was I was actually going into Amish country in Ohio, and this fan had contacted me online, and she wanted to know if she could meet me because she lived in Ohio. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm going up into Amish country. Let's get together. We can have lunch, and I can sign your books or whatever. And it was kind of interesting because it was not long after I uh, had a bout with cancer and had gone through chemotherapy, so my hair was growing back. And she touched my hair, and I was just like, that's a little personal.
Oh, wow.
Oh, oh no.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
Yeah. So
That's
that was a little different. I mean, she was
Was
really
it?
nice otherwise, but it was just like, okay, that's a little bit too much. That's too close.
Yeah, I'd be a little.
Yeah.
yeah.
I
Especially
mean,
For
I
anyone
since, like,
watching, don't touch people's hair
don't
without
don't
asking.
just
yeah, and
never touch.
especially
Don't touch
if
anyone
you're,
without asking.
recovering from something like cancer, the hair regrowth process is actually really traumatic. A lot of people don't realize that. And so, anything to do with the hair is like hands off. Just don't talk about the hair. Don't just leave it alone. Because like one of the other things I had was the kind of myth is that if you go through chemotherapy, your hair will always come back curly. As you can see, mine is straight as a board. It was a board prior to. It came back in straight. But everybody seemed to be obsessed to tell me, "Oh, your hair's going to come back curly, and you're going to look like a little orphan Annie." Well, I didn't want to look like little orphan Annie, and that's not like a great thing to tell somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no.
So it's kind of interesting the way people don't realize their words or actions can affect someone. So I guess that's like with the fan thing, that was kind of like, kind of weird.
Maybe remember boundaries and maybe keep it to talk about the book, talk about the subject.
Exactly.
There's no real reason to compliment or to do anything, comment on someone's physical appearance other than maybe like makeup or your style. Makeup and style. Something that someone can change within 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Comment on that.
Or so like say, I love your shirt, where did you get it? That's totally fine, but don't just like be like, oh my gosh, your hair's coming in really great.
No.
That's a little too personal.
Oh my god.
That's too personal.
I think a good way I read someone saying to have more just meaningful compliments is if you compliment something that someone had a choice in. So something like how our hair is growing is not, versus your style, this amazing outfit you put together. The lipstick that earlier, I was like, I love your lipstick.
We love that
like,
you're,
shows that you created that, so that compliment is so much more meaningful because it wasn't just like you're like, yep, I woke up and it was like you had a say in it. So I think that to keep your compliments more meaningful and definitely away from any sort of appearance.
And keep in mind that anybody that you're a fan of, they're people too. You shouldn't put people up on a pedestal and think that they're a certain thing because, everybody goes to McDonald's once in a while, or everybody takes a shower. It's the same thing. You're not doing anything different. You're still, everybody's a human being. It's not.
Yeah.
That's so important for everybody to remember that, I think Shay and I feel like we talk about this quite a bit, where you can have role models and people that you look up to, but you have to also understand every single person is a person, which means
Exactly.
nobody, like you were saying with your characters, how boring if they were perfect all the time.
Exactly.
Like nobody
Exactly.
is perfect all the time, and that includes our role models, it includes our favorite artists, authors, celebrities, and
Ourselves.
Exactly.
ourselves,
Exactly.
you know?
Give ourselves grace.
100%.
How important do you feel like research is when it comes to writing horror fiction? And do you find yourself diving into different subjects to add depth and authenticity? And do you ever consult specialists on different things?
Oh, yes. I think research is very important, especially when you're dealing with something that there is experts in the world about, because you never know who is going to encounter your art. So
Mm-hmm.
when I first started with, writing about exorcisms and possessions, I was like, okay, I want to get this right. I need to make my own spin on it, but I want to make it believable in terms of how exorcism is done, what the steps are to knowing someone is possessed, and how that would be different from, whether somebody had, a mental illness or a seizure disorder or whatever. So the first thing I did was I tracked down an out of print book by the exorcist priest who they consulted for The Exorcist. And so I read that book. Took me a while to find it, but I finally found it through Interlibrary Loan. And then I ended up, I don't know if you all had seen the horror film a few years ago called Deliver Us from Evil. It was about the police
Yes.
sergeant.
Mhm.
I got in contact with Ralph Sarchi online, and so I talked to him about his experiences and stuff. And so
Ooh.
I'm definitely very much you can't write about it unless you know it. So you have to be able to research what it is you're writing about.
Yeah, fuck
I
yeah.
know this wasn't on our question list, but when you're like reaching out, do you
Mhm.
have any advice for some of our viewers who, if they've been wanting to maybe reach out to someone for information or for research, but they feel maybe nervous or like, what do I say? Like, do you have any advice for that on when you
Uh,
reach out to someone?
to me, I just do it as being perfectly honest. I'm like, I'll send a note like, "Hello, my name is Danielle DeVour. I'm an author of, blah 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 books." Or if I was just starting out, I'd be like, I want to be an author and I'm planning on writing this book about da da da. Is there any information that you'd be willing to give me that would help me in my research toward the writing of this novel? And
Oh, yeah.
you just you're completely honest and you're respectful,
To the
and
point.
those two things will get you a lot further than anything else.
Hell
Yeah.
yeah.
And short and concise.
Yeah,
That's my
because
biggest issue.
people are busy
Speaking
too. You don't want to like send like a 20-page missive. People don't have time to read that.
no. Speaking of convincing people,
Yes.
how do you convince people to read horror who are like afraid of it or convinced that it's too unsettling and too scary? How do you draw them in to one of your books?
I try to, because I write, I've written like several different types of books over the years. For a while there, I did write a little bit of young adult, and so if it's someone that say doesn't like gory things, then I'll steer them more toward the young adult stuff because it's not described as graphically. But if it's someone who is like really creeped out by the horror genre in general, I'll steer them toward like what are kind of well-known kind of cozy horror books, like
Ooh.
that's kind of like it's now the name of it, but there's authors like Darcy Coates who writes a bunch of like haunted house stories that are spooky, but they don't have like intense things like say in Kubrick's The Shining, where you see the person get killed with the axe in the head and that type of. It doesn't have that in those books, so it's like general ghost stories. So there's something that there's a little bit of a creep factor there, but it's not like completely in your face. And so if they happen to like that, then you can hopefully get them hooked to go a little further, if that makes any sense.
Bit by bit by
Yeah,
bit.
exactly.
Real men.
Exactly. Just like the mafia. Just yeah, pull them back in.
The horror mafia.
That's right.
In your opinion, what distinguishes horror fiction from other genres? What sets it apart and makes it such a compelling genre for both creators and audiences?
I think one of the biggest things is that horror is the only genre that's completely subjective. And what I mean by that is that we all have completely different fears. None of us are afraid of the exact same things. So you can have a horror novel that completely doesn't affect one person, but say this person over here is scared to death of butterflies. Whereas romance,
True.
the romance novel is about falling in love. That's flat out the romance genre.
Yeah,
So that's the biggest thing that sets horror aside, is that it's the only genre that's subjective.
That's true.
yeah, that's very true.
Ooh. And everybody, don't forget, we know we're doing a lot of interview,
Oh,
but at the
yes.
end of our interview, we're doing a giveaway. So stick around. At the end of our questions, we're going to be doing the prize wheel and spin to see who wins the giveaway. And one of
Yeah.
those is that special edition hardcover book that has an alternate ending that no one else has seen yet. So that's pretty
Yes.
special, pretty wild. Have you considered adapting your own work for the screen, for TV
Uh,
or film? And if so, what challenges or opportunities do you anticipate for that?
I would love to have my series adapted into either, film or TV. The biggest thing that is a challenge is one, you need a lot of money to be
Yeah.
able to adapt anything for, a visual medium. So your best bet is to hope that you sell a lot of books, and then the right person reads your book and then is like, okay, I want to put money toward this. Because otherwise, if you're just, a small author who has, maybe sold 20 books, you won't even get through the door. It doesn't matter how good your book is. If they don't see that there's a possibility for an audience, they're not going to put money toward it. And so
Hmm.
far I have not reached the threshold that, I've sold enough books to, like, be like, okay, I'm going to take on your book. I have had a couple of times when somebody has been interested, but they've passed, unfortunately.
Do you
You'll
think
get there.
when it happens, because it's not if, it's when, do you think you get to be part of the writing the screenplay, or do you think it's where you just sign your check to yourself and accept that money and they write it?
I would like to be part of it, but I know that
Hmm.
getting the realities of getting into it is that you kind of have to have a very big name in order to have that much control. So, in
Yep.
order to actually be involved in a film, to where you can say, okay, I want this character to look like this, and I want the script to have this point and this point and this point. It's okay if you cut that. You have to be somebody like Anne Rice or like Stephen King.
Yeah.
You, as a regular person, you're not going to have that much control. Chances are you're going to be, your agent is going to sell the rights to your novel, and then they may or may not contact you to work on the screenplay. Most of the time, not. And then you'll probably, if you're lucky, get a chance to go visit the set once. That's the
Wow.
reality of how things are right now.
Damn.
The
That's a
person who
harsh reality
actually
check.
created it. Like, that's so wild. Like, you would think, but that's the way it is, I guess,
Yeah,
right now.
yeah.
Mm. So this next question, I feel like we've kind of approached this. So I'm gonna ask something that's not on there
Okay.
because I just want to know what is a trope in any kind of writing, not just horror writing, that you just can't stand. You're just like, I'm so tired of seeing this trope over and over and over.
Um, Probably the happily ever after. And the
Ah.
reason why is that my absolute favorite romance novel was Love Story. If anyone has
Mm-hmm.
ever seen the movie or read the book, it does not have a happy ending. And so thus
No.
now it is not considered a romance because it doesn't have a happy ending.
Oh.
And I'm
Wow.
like, well, you can have, a romantic book and have a romance book, but things just don't work out because that's
Yeah.
realistic.
Wuthering Heights.
Yeah.
Hello.
I mean, and I understand that, a lot of romance readers like it to be escapism, but I think there's a place for stories that don't have a happy ever after. That's my opinion. I don't know how much I might get, put up on the dartboard for that, but that's my opinion.
I like
Oh,
it.
I think again, it's one of those things. There's that audience for both. There are lots of people who need the escapism and they need the happy ending, but there are also people who want it to feel more real and realistic, or maybe they don't want every single story to end like a Disney movie, you know? Like
Mm-hmm.
you want more substance than that. You want a surprise. You don't want to like be like, well, I already know that these two are going to end up happily ever after at the end. Like
Yeah.
where's the mystery then if every single romance oh for sure they're always happy at the end?
Hmm.
Like what's keeping
Pointless.
you in? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to ask my own question as well, because I find that when it comes to like, well, me personally, I feel like I could never write a book because I can write only so much and then be like, all right, I'm done with it. How do you find the motivation to keep going and to keep writing?
Well, for me, it's kind of like, to be honest, I actually fell into writing books. It was kind of funny. I actually, like, way back when, I wanted to be a special effects makeup artist for horror films. And
Nice.
when I was going, and I could, back then, they did not have the things they have now. They didn't have, like, the big, like, special effects makeup schools or anything like that. So my choices were either A, being able to go to film school, which was horribly expensive, or
Yes.
B, going to college and getting a theater degree. So that's the route I took because that's what I could afford. Well, as I went through my theater degree, you had to take, a variety of different classes, one of them being playwriting. And I actually really enjoyed it, so I started writing plays. And I left the idea of being a makeup artist at the time because in order to, like, say, get into the industry, this was like 1994, you had to move out to LA, you had to
Mm.
be an intern at one of the special effects houses, working there for no pay, 90 hours a week, and then somehow live in LA.
God.
No.
So it was impossible. You had to be either rich or you had to have family that lived out there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I left being a makeup artist behind. And so, I got really into playwriting and I thought it was really fun. And as a child, I'd write like little short stories and stuff, and people said, "Oh, that's really good. You should keep writing." But I didn't really think a whole lot of it. And, the more I wrote plays, I was like, okay, maybe this is my calling. And I got into directing when I was doing theater degree as well. So it's like, okay, maybe I can get into film that way and not do effects, but maybe I can write or direct. And I didn't really like, pursue it any like further than like an idea per se, but I wrote a couple like short like little film scripts and stuff I thought would be kind of fun to produce on my own and little things, and I never did. But then finally, I had a friend who was into writing Harry Potter fan fiction of all things, and she's like, "Oh, you should really
I'm
write
sorry.
some of this."
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll leave. No, it's not me.
Did you summon Shay?
So very.
She's
It's
like,
like,
I've been summoned.
hello. Sorry. Go
No,
on.
you're fine. So, I had a lot of fun writing the Harry Potter fan fiction, and I was like, after a while, I was like, it'd be kind of fun to write something for myself, a real original thing. And I got the flu, and I was horribly sick.
Mm,
And so I got into the bathtub, and I was just like, how when you're so sick, you just want to soak. And I'm
yeah.
listening to the water run out of the tap, and this line hits my head. And it was like, you've been on the streets too long when the sound of falling rain sounds like someone urinating. And I was like, where did this come from and who the hell is it? And so then it
Mm-hmm.
became my first book I ever wrote, which is called Riding on the Tail of the Devil. It's about a straight kid who gets turned into a vampire only to discover he's the long lost vampire king. So that was where my first book came up, just from
That's
having the
tight.
flu and being in the bathtub.
Wow. Also,
That's
if you
awesome.
do live in a big city long enough, you do confuse the sound of rain with urinating. This has happened to me in Hollywood. I was like, "It's raining," and I ran to my window all happy, and no, it's just a guy peeing on a tree. That's all.
Gross. I don't think I want to live in LA.
Oh,
More
I
power to you,
know.
Melissa.
Ugh. Um, do you ever think about trying to strike a balance with like having there be gore, but also trying to think about some people are more sensitive, or is it more like, hey, this is horror genre, so I'm gonna write what I want to write, and that sort of thing doesn't
Well,
matter?
my stuff isn't like per se like extreme gore or anything. I know there's some horror authors that write some really extreme stuff. If you're interested in seeking that out, check out Judith Sonnet. Her stuff is brutal, and I don't say
Mm.
that lightly. It is absolutely brutal.
Oof.
My stuff is more along the lines of like a standard horror film. It's not like torture porn or anything like that. There's a little bit of gore, but most of it is about, the terror and stuff, the lead up to the climax. So I don't really necessarily think that I have to like fudge my stuff backwards. Now I did have to a certain extent when I wrote young adult, but I just can't do it anymore. Young adult has gotten to be so restrictive in terms of what you can show because the feelings in terms of young adult and our society has changed to a certain extent so much that you know young adult has to have the most it can have on screen is like a Disney movie. And not that there's
Mm-hmm.
anything wrong with a Disney movie, that's just not what I want to write. So I changed over writing to all adult stuff.
That's totally fair, totally valid.
Yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely.
What are you hoping that your readers take away from your writings? Like, what kind of experience are you hoping to leave them with?
I hope that they have a fun time and they are entertained, ultimately. I hope that they like really get a kick out of my characters because I put a lot of thought in them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but beyond that, I just ultimately want them to have a good time.
Fuck
Fair
yeah, keep it a wild ride.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. So for our last question, what advice would you give
Da-da-da-da-da.
to no?
No, I was
Oh,
giving a
well
drum
we
roll
have
dramatically.
okay, okay, okay. So what advice would you give to aspiring authors who are interested in exploring horror fiction? And do you have any tips specifically for women who want to make their mark in this genre?
In general, I would say read, 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 because in order to write your genre, you have to know your genre. So you have to know how horror is currently being written. So read a bunch of modern horror. You have to know how it was done in the past, so you know what isn't currently popular. So that's the biggest thing, and that goes for any genre. You have to read, 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 read to know what it is that you're trying to write. In
Mm-hmm.
terms of being a woman in horror, since things have opened up to a certain extent, it's a little easier. But know that when you say go to a Facebook group that is related to the horror genre, most of the authors that people will talk about are going to be men. It's very
Mm-hmm.
hard to get the fan base of women authors to talk about their books as often as they do male authors. It's happening more often now. It's not like it was, but it's still predominantly male authors that they talk about.
So kill them. I mean, what? No.
Do
Keep
you
male
have,
authors alive.
other than, of course, yourself, everybody check out
Mhm.
her books, and you mentioned
Yeah.
one other woman. Are there any other women in horror that you would recommend that we support?
Absolutely. Anaya Alburn is great. She wrote this one book that I absolutely love. It's called Brother. It's kind of like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets The Orphan and a couple other things. It's really, really good stuff. Tenerife Dew writes some really cool, creepy BIPOC haunted house stories. one of my favorite vampire authors is Jemiah Jefferson, and she has the Voice of the Blood series that came out in the 90s, but it's still amazing. Classics like Mary Shelley, Anne Rice, that type of thing.
Love it. Before we do our giveaway, is there anything you'd like to share, like an upcoming book that's about to come out, your website, your socials that you want to share with everyone one more time before we get into our giveaway?
Well, my website is danielledevor.com, and you can find all my socials linked on there. So, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all of them are on the website. The most exciting thing besides the hardbacks coming out is that right now, books 5 in the Marker Chronicles is slated to come out in October. So, Sorrow's Fall is finally coming after a several-year hiatus. So,
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
the return.
I love that it's October too.
yes,
Mm-hmm. Just in time for spooky season.
exactly.
It's so exciting.
Oh wait, no, I want to see this spin thing that we're gonna do it. We have our producer who's going to hopefully maybe pop that video on the screen that we have for the giveaway.
The spinning wheel.
Oh, there it is. Okay, here it goes. So this is Melissa. This is everyone who entered, right? How did it work?
Yes, anyone who retweeted
Woo!
before our stream today, I went ahead and put you in a list, and then I clicked shuffle on it, so it shuffled the list, so there's no anything like that. It's totally random, and then we spend.
JL begin. 26.
Yeah!
Yay!
Our first winner! You win a
Yay!
paperback.
This
Who's
is
next? Drum roll.
this is so cool. I love.
It
I
is
want
our
to make all
business.
decisions like this. Luna
Right?
Wilson, 1313. Yay, Luna!
Yay, Luna!
That's a great name. Anytime I hear Luna, I'm like, yes. Give me that moon element. It's fun to be a V something. It's fun to be something. It's so fun.
Vampire.
A vampire. Oh,
Oh,
that's
that's
duh. That's awesome. That's perfect.
That's actually fitting.
You want a paper
Right?
book?
God funny. 6969. Yay. Oh, she's in the chat.
Oh, cool.
Yes, you won! Yes!
Congratulations.
We've got several winners in the chat.
And
Yes!
Megan D. Yay. Look at y'all winning books. We love it. It's fun to be a vampire, yeah. Does you?
Has that been 5 yet? I lost count.
I don't know.
I think
Wicked
so.
214. I think that was it.
I think that's the one who wins our hardback. Yeah!
Was Wicked 214? Yeah!
Yeah,
Wow.
Wicked! You won the hardcover!
Congratulations to all of our winners. And thank you so much for doing that, Danielle.
Oh, sure.
That's
That's
And
so
thanks
cool.
to City Out Press for sponsoring the giveaway. They are
yeah.
a really wonderful publisher and also a wonderful publisher to work for. I was an author with them for quite a few years before they hired me, so I have like a very friendly, happy tone with them. I guess we'll put it that way. But they're
Awesome.
great
I love
people.
that. So do you want us to have the winners contact us and we pass on the information
Yes,
to
please.
you?
That would be
Perfect.
wonderful.
Alright. So if
And
you
then
guys
I
are
will give
watching
their
and you won,
information
DM
to
us.
City Out Press, and then they will send people their books.
That
Oh,
is so
perfect.
cool. We love a giveaway. Ah! If you
I
get the
want to
book,
do this every
please
stream now.
tweet about the book
Good,
and let us
great.
know how good it is.
I know. I'm going to order one too.
Yay!
I'm stoked. I want to order a hardback because I'm super into hardback.
Well, I will
weird.
message
I want it
you
to be
on Twitter
hard.
as soon as they're
As soon as they're available.
Yeah. Or you can do the pre-order thingy on my website.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes,
Yes.
that's what I want to do. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you
we're-
all for having me.
So much
This is
knowledge.
amazing.
It's so inspiring too.
And
I'm
I'm not
happy to come
sure
back
when we're
anytime.
having back. Yeah, I was going to say, I'm not sure when we're having you back, but we're having you back for some ghost
Ghost
stories. Oh, God.
Absolutely. I would
Stories.
love
Right
to
as I
do
said
that.
that, the fucking cat opened the door and the kid squeaked, and I was like,
He's like, Mom,
Okay.
the ghosts are bothering me.
He is. He's literally crying. Like, come to bed. All right, everyone. I guess we will see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks,
Thank
Danielle.
you.
Thank
See you
you.
next
Danielle.
Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.